But you can see what the mantra is going to be. Russia, extremism, threats to our democracy, the continuation of the big lie around January 6th, and so on. But what I think people have to realize is that these are signs of incredible desperation, as is the fact that the sanction regime that has come about through the provoked war in Ukraine, a war which Joe Biden and his controllers wanted, the sanctions regime is directed against us. It's not, I mean, Russia, frankly, was ready for it. Not that they're going to have an easy time of it, but they were ready for it. This is the final wrecking ball being taken to the US economy and potentially to the dollar as the world reserve currency. Because these guys are so desperate. If they can't control the United States, they're ready to unleash complete chaos, economically, politically, and every other way, and try and move in with an even more brutal emergency regime than what we saw during the pandemic and during other periods. But these are signs of desperation. And what underlies all of it is the fact that their global financial system is indeed bankrupt. And if we simply stop bailing it out, if we simply stop letting them dictate our economic policy, and we simply decide to become a sovereign nation again, their power is going to dissolve. And in a sense, that's the battle over Detroit, with the World Economic Forum making Detroit as a pilot project. They want to make this a pilot project in the final destruction of any industrial manufacturing capability that an independent nation would have and turn it into, essentially a colony of the international banks. But what they're up against is a movement which is intent on restoring our political sovereignty. And if we can give them the weapons to understand how we restore our economic sovereignty, then they have very great cause to be desperate. So I want to conclude my remarks with that, turn it over to Bob, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
Okay, can you hear me, Susan?
Yeah.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Yeah, my name's Bob Ingram. I'm out here in California. I'm going to keep my remarks very short. And I just want to very briefly talk about two things. One is this question of abolishing the Federal Reserve and establishing a system of national banking, sovereign credit in the United States. And secondly is this, what Susan mentioned, this urban transformation project, which has now been set up in Detroit by the World Economic Forum to essentially destroy what's left of the city of Detroit and destroy the people who are living in it. I don't know if everyone has seen it, but I recently authored an article which is up on the LaRouche PAC website. I think it's still up on the homepage, the front page, entitled "The World Economic Forum's Plot to Murder Detroit." So if this is a subject that you think you should know more about or are interested in, I would urge you to read that article. I would just say that article is not comprehensive. It doesn't cover everything, and I'm certainly not going to cover everything here. It essentially is an introduction to what the World Economic Forum has now unleashed in Detroit. But before I go into that, I'm going to go into that a little bit. But before I go into it, I just want to briefly return to what Susan was saying about abolishing the Federal Reserve, because I just, I don't want to discuss it in depth, but I want to make a particular point, which is, that there are some people, excuse me, there are some people who maybe think that, well, abolishing the Federal Reserve and creating a national bank, that's like a shtick of LaRouche PAC. That's LaRouche PAC's thing. as if this is something, just another of the many, variety of things we need to do, and something that, you're free to not do anything about if you're more interested in something else. And the point that I want to just make here, as strongly as I can, is that this is not some fixation of LaRouche PAC. It's not something where we're trying to make our name around abolishing the Federal Reserve. If you look at Detroit, in 1950, Detroit had 1.9 million people. 1.9 million people in 1950. Today, it's got 632,000 people. It's lost 2/3 of its population. In 1950, it was the 4th largest city in the United States. After New York, Chicago, and Philadelphia, it was just ahead of Los Angeles, which passed it about a year later. But it was, the 4th, 5th largest city in the United States. Today, it's the 28th largest city in the United States. And it's not because, other cities have gotten a lot more people. They have. But if Detroit still had the same population that it had in 1950, it would still be in the top 5 or top 6 or top 7. It's lost 2/3 of its population. And no other city in the country has that happened to. At least not a large city. People say, well, people just moved out to the county or something, but they're still there. Well, after World War II, hundreds of thousands of people moved out of New York City to Long Island, to Westchester. Large numbers of people moved out of Philadelphia, out of Boston, out of Chicago. This was the creation of the suburbs in the 1950s. But those cities didn't lose their population. Detroit was the center of manufacturing. It was the arsenal of democracy. It was the Motor City. And radiating out from Detroit were hundreds, if not thousands, of manufacturing centers and machine shops and all other kinds of things, almost all of which are now gone. They've been destroyed. They've vanished. They've been shut down. And the skilled workforce has been destroyed. So we now have a situation where, as I said, there are 632,000 people in the city of Detroit, and 39% of them, that is almost 40% of the people who are left in Detroit, are living below the poverty line. Almost 40% of what's left of Detroit's citizens are living below the poverty line. And 57% of children in Detroit, 57% of the children, which is the next generation, are living below the poverty line. This is destruction. This is depopulation. This is genocide. Now, before I say a little bit more about the World Economic Forum and what they're up to, as I said, the point I want to make here is what has happened to Detroit is obviously extreme. But if you travel throughout the Great Lakes region, the greater Midwest, as well as other parts of the country, but particularly in the area from, say, Buffalo, New York, over to Minneapolis and down to St. Louis, that whole region in there, there are thousands and thousands of large, medium, and small cities which have been subjected to the same dynamic that has gone on in Detroit. The shutdown of manufacturing, the destruction of family farms, the collapse of infrastructure, and now, this rampage of fentanyl and heroin and opioid abuse, which is killing off tens and tens of thousands of people, particularly young people. This is a result of allowing the central bankers, as led by the Federal Reserve in the United States, destroy our economy. And what the point that I want to make, again, as emphatically as I can, is that there is no way to reverse this economic destruction, this mass murder. There's no way to reverse it without getting rid of the Federal Reserve, without shutting it down. Their policies are not only have caused all of the inflation we're seeing today, but their policies have been responsible for destroying the productive economy of the United States. And as bad as it is right now, they're escalating. I mean, we are looking at, potentially far, far worse economic devastation than we've seen up to this point in the months and years ahead. So if you have children or grandchildren or nieces or nephews, recognize that they do not have a future at all if we do not shut down the Federal Reserve and replace it with a sovereign American credit system. Now, we've written extensively about Alexander Hamilton and about Abraham Lincoln and his greenback policy. This is the model for what needs to be done today. I'm not going to go into that right now. If people have questions on it, that's fine. But this must be done, and we have to make this the center of the programmatic, fight within the Trump movement and across the United States. This is the only way we can accomplish what Trump said he wanted to accomplish, which was to, re-industrialize America. Now, as to the Detroit thing, because I want to cut this short, the World Economic Forum, last August, the World Economic Forum established something called the Center for Urban Transformation in Detroit. Last December, about 4 months ago, they had a conference, a summit, with all kinds of presentations and panel discussions in which they laid out their vision of what they intend to do. They've got big money coming in behind them, financial speculators and others. I could just wrap it up. Most of it is sheer lunacy, but I could sort of, picture it in a nutshell by one of the comments that one of the panelists made in the conference they had last December. One of these panelists, who was a spokesman for the World Economic Forum, said that in reimagining Detroit, we have to get rid of the idea of these, we have to get rid of what he called the legacy notions of manufacturing, engineering, and infrastructure. Legacy notions that, what are those legacy notions? Well, manufacturing plants, industry, infrastructure, water, electricity, transportation, hospitals, engineering, machine tool shops. He said we have to get rid of all of this, and we have to reimagine Detroit as a green city. So, for instance, their idea in healthcare is not to build more hospitals, not to increase the doctor-patient ratio or the nurse-patient ratio, not to hire more people, not to improve healthcare. Their idea of healthcare is to teach people how to plant vegetable gardens so that they'll have a healthier diet. And I'm not kidding. They had a whole discussion about this. And similarly, what is being proposed is lunacy. We're on the brink right now, and we've already begun to see it with some of these, blackouts, rolling brownouts, drought conditions where water is being rationed in some places. We're on the brink of literally massive shortages in both electricity generation and water transport, fresh water, availability. as a result of, no investment in these things for decades. No investment there, and we're on the brink of literally finding ourselves with a situation where not just are the shelves empty when you go to the store, but farmers can't get water to plant their crops, to irrigate their crops, where farmers and factories can't get electricity, where cities are under blackout. And the World Economic Forum says, in their entire panel conference, which lasted 3 days last December, 3 days with several dozen speakers, none of that was discussed. Drugs were not discussed. They want to reimagine Detroit and they don't even mention the drug problem. Instead, it's we're going to build green housing. We're going to have kids plant trees. We're going to have, bike lanes. And meanwhile, the population is driven downwards. It's depopulation. It's genocide. This is coming from the Davos crowd, Klaus Schwab, but is the financial oligarchy which is behind it all. So this is what our fight around returning to national banking is all about. So, this is a very brief sketch, but, I want to stop talking so everyone else has a chance. Okay?
All right. Thanks a lot, Bob.